Sam Marshall is standing by. Sam, a very good morning to you. What is going on in Sharpeville this morning?
Good morning, Lebanon. Good morning once again to the viewers. The sun has come out a little bit. We are in that stage where we're preparing the George Stabe Sports Grounds for the final leg of our 20th anniversary celebration today. That's, of course, of the Constitution. Today, in 1996, the late former President Tata Nelson Mandela signed the Constitution into a law. And in actual fact, it only came into effect on the 4th of February in 1997. Joining me right now, we heard from the Minister of Justice a little bit earlier about the Constitution and the role that it plays, but I think you can't have a chat about the Constitution and not look at the Chapter 9 institutions. It's been quite a prolific year for any Chapter 9 institution. I'm now joined by the interim chair at the Human Rights Commission, Adv Mohammed Shafie. Sir, thank you very much for joining me here. Let's maybe quickly reflect on Chapter 9 institutions and the role that they play in upholding the Constitution.
Good morning to you and to the listeners all over. I think the importance of a Chapter 9 is basically as we are the vanguards and the champions of the Constitution itself. We must promote, support and protect a constitutional democracy which we fought so hard for. It is good that we are here today because this is where it all emanated from. Sharpeville 1960, right? Where we now decided when we put the Constitution together, we said we'll never repeat what happened of those injustices that happened here. A Chapter 9 body is such an important institution that it can hold everybody accountable for everything, both the public sector and the private sector, the executive, the judiciary, the legislature, and all organs of state as well, including business as well. As a Human Rights Commission, I think in this 20 years that we've come a long way. We've had a lot of successes, we had a lot of challenges, but I think we're getting there.
Advocate, last year you celebrated 20 years of existence. And maybe anecdotally, it could be argued, if there was a Newsmaker award, it would go to the Human Rights Commission. It's been a prolific year, not only an amount of high-profile stories, but reflect for me very quickly on 2016. You've been in the news a lot this year.
We've been in the news for racism, which is rearing its ugly head, which should have been outlawed, criminalized as far back as in the year 2000 when we had the anti-racism conference. We won the biggest award, I think, internationally for poor people when we took the micro-lenders to court in an industry that was worth 1.6 trillion rand, and we halted them from stealing beyond 168 billion rand. 42 million people were affected by that judgment itself. Enormous challenges. We had challenges going to Limpopo where we had to investigate why we have a democracy when people can talk to each other. Why are we're having state-of-the-art schools, but schools are being burnt? At the universities, the transformation agenda is not as it's supposed to be, and hence the Fees Must Fall campaign continues. And these are the challenges that confront the Human Rights Commission on a daily basis. And we work very hard out there. Remember, we are 207 people, 8 commissioners that must look after the human rights of 52 million people in this country. It's an enormous challenge, but it's a very exciting challenge. We've come, in this 20 years, we've come far. And we are excited because the new commissioners, the 7 new commissioners that are going to join me, are coming on the 3rd of January 2017. Yeah. It's benchmark against what we did, and we're projecting in the next 20 years where we want to make South Africa and brand South Africa as a human rights country, right? Where nobody will flout to the Constitution and think they'll get away with it.
Advocate, it would be remiss of me not to mention that today is International Human Rights Day. But I want to talk about the validity of findings by the Human Rights Commission. There are still a sector or a large part of the population that once there's a finding made by the Human Rights Commission, that there's this idea that maybe I should follow it, maybe I'm not, maybe the remedial action is more recommendation than actually backed by law.
No, it's got the full backing of the law. Let me tell you. It's written into the Constitution. It's written into the Constitution. It's got the full backing of the law. And I must tell everybody now, loud and clear, that we have barking powers and biting powers. The barking powers is when we put those investigation reports and make recommendations. Our challenge now, and we're going to make it the focus of our work, is to make sure that every report that went to Parliament, the recommendations are going to be filled to the letter of the law. And if that's not going to happen, there's going to be consequence management. from the Human Rights Commission. We're going to take people to court if we have to. And I mean, recently the EFF case that went to the public protector case basically demonstrated the importance of a Chapter 9 institution. And the Human Rights Commission is no exception to that, to ensure that, we entrench democracy. We've come from a very painful past. We never want to repeat those mistakes again. We also want to drum it into our children and future generations. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and nothing and nobody is above that Constitution. We must understand that, and we're going to champion that. As long as the human rights, the Constitution is there, the Chapter 9 bodies will be there, and they will have to do their work. What is very interesting and very reassuring to hear is when the President says, we have appointed these Chapter 9 institutions, we will respect them and the decisions they take. So we have an independence to do the work we do without fear, favor or prejudice. And so basically we've been given that sanction, the green lights to do the work that we do. Unlike other places in the world where, when you have independent bodies like this, there's always political interference somewhere along the line. We're above that, and we must now start demonstrating that we're going to make it happen.
For sure. Advocate, thank you very much for joining me. That's the chair of the Human Rights Commission, talking to us about and reflecting on International Human Rights Day, but also the 20th anniversary of our Constitution. That clanking that you're hearing behind me is the structure being put up for the event a little bit later that will be officiated by the President of South Africa, Mr. Jacob Zuma, the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Advocate Michael Masuta, and a host of dignitaries that will be reflecting on what this day means for us. We're going to go to an ad break. A little bit later we'll talk to some of the community members here, and we'll find out how this community has changed, shaped by what happened in March of 1960, the Sharpeville Massacre.